In the cold, silent expanse of space, the research vessel Horizon glided smoothly through the dark void of the Epsilon Quadrant. Its metallic hull gleamed under the distant starlight, a testament to advanced engineering and interstellar exploration. Junho. Park stood near the observation window, his hands clasped behind his back, eyes fixed on the alien landscape approaching through the transparent viewport. Unlike the nervous alien crew around him, he appeared calm and collected, almost serene in the face of the unknown. The planet before them was unlike anything most species had encountered. Its surface shimmered with strange crystalline formations that seemed to pulse with an inner light. Jagged rock formations jutted out like broken teeth, creating a landscape that looked both beautiful and dangerous. Kirill Vox, the lead alien scientist, monitored the scanning equipment with intense concentration. His multiple sensory appendages twitched rapidly, processing data streams that flickered across holographic displays. He had spent decades studying unknown worlds, but something about this planet felt different. Unusual energy signatures detected, Vox announced, his translator device converting his complex language into standard communication frequencies. The biological readings are unpredictable. Junho nodded, listening carefully. Where other humans might have shown excitement or fear, he maintained a steady demeanor. His years of training in xenobiology and interspecies communication had taught him the value of patience and observation. As the Horizon's landing modules prepared for descent, a strange creature emerged from behind one of the crystalline formations. It looked like a hybrid between a porcupine and a living mineral structure, with sharp crystalline spines covering its body. Most species would have immediately activated defensive protocols, preparing weapons and shields. But Junho was not most species. The creature radiated aggressive energy, its spines extending outward like razor-sharp needles. Any logical approach would suggest maintaining distance, preparing for potential conflict. The alien crew members tensed, their hands moving toward defensive equipment. Junho, however, took a step forward. "Easy," he said softly, his voice calm and steady. The universal translator converted his words, but it was more than just language. His body language, his tone, the subtle rhythms of his speech carried a message of peace. The creature paused. Its spines, which moments ago had been fully extended in a threatening display, began to retract slightly. Something in Junho's approach was different from what it had experienced with other species. Kirill Vox watched in absolute disbelief. Centuries of scientific research, countless interspecies encounters, and he had never seen anything like this. Humans were still a relatively new species in the Galactic Confederation, and their methods continued to surprise and challenge existing scientific understanding. Junho continued to move slowly, his movements deliberate and non-threatening. He didn't reach out to touch the creature, understanding that physical contact might be interpreted as aggression. Instead, he maintained a respectful distance, allowing the creature to assess him. The crystalline being seemed to study Junho, its complex sensory structures scanning him from multiple angles. Where other creatures might have attacked or fled, this one appeared curious. Something in Junho's demeanor communicated a fundamental message. "I mean you no harm." Minutes passed. The alien crew held their breath, monitoring systems ready to intervene at the slightest sign of danger. But nothing happened. The creature remained, its aggressive posture gradually softening. "Fascinating," Vox muttered, recording every moment of the interaction. The scientific implications were enormous. How could a single human communicate so effectively with a completely unknown life form? Junho remained still, a living embodiment of calm and respect. He understood something fundamental that many species missed. Communication was not just about language, but about intention, empathy, and mutual understanding. As the first rays of the alien planet's twin suns began to illuminate the landscape, the crystalline creature made a surprising move. It shifted slightly, no longer in a defensive stance. A subtle interaction was taking place, not through words, not through technology, but through something far more profound. This was more than a first encounter. This was a moment that would challenge everything the Galactic Confederation understood about interspecies communication, and Junho Park was at the center of it all, a quiet human who seemed to speak a universal language of connection. The research facility hummed with energy as Yuna Kim reviewed the latest mission logs. Her fingers moved quickly across holographic screens, analyzing every detail of Junho's remarkable encounter on the alien planet. Junho had become something of a legend within the research team. Where most would see a potential threat, he saw an opportunity for understanding. His approach to alien life was unlike anything in scientific records. During a critical mission on a planet known for its hostile environment, Junho was part of a small exploration team. The landscape was harsh, sharp rocks, toxic atmosphere, and creatures that seemed designed to attack anything that moved. Most teams would have arrived fully armed, prepared for conflict. Junho's team was different. They carried minimal defensive equipment, focusing instead on communication tools and research gear. As they navigated through a narrow canyon, a massive predator appeared. It was unlike anything they had encountered before. A creature with multiple limbs, covered in a tough exoskeleton that seemed to shimmer with adaptive camouflage. Its multiple eyes locked onto the team, radiating pure territorial aggression. The awe. Other team members froze. Standard protocol demanded immediate defensive action. Weapons began to charge, protective shields activated. But Junho raised his hand, signaling them to wait. "Stop," he said quietly to his teammates. "Don't move." The Yao predator was massive, easily 3 times the size of a human. Its body tensed, ready to attack. Any sudden movement would trigger an immediate assault. The team looked at Junho like he had lost his mind. Junho began to make slow, deliberate movements. Not defensive, not aggressive, simply present. He studied the creature's body language, its subtle shifts of muscle and posture. Where others saw a monster, he saw a living being with its own complex communication system. He started to make soft sounds, not words, but rhythmic noises that mimicked the creature's own communication patterns. It was a technique he had developed through years of studying alien species, finding the universal language beneath spoken communication. The predator's posture began to change. Its aggressive stance softened slightly. The multiple eyes that had been locked in a threatening gaze began to show something else: curiosity. Karel Vox, watching the recorded footage back at the research center, couldn't believe what he was seeing. Xenobiologists had spent centuries developing complex translation technologies, yet here was a human using something far more fundamental: empathy. Junho took one careful step forward. The creature could have attacked in an instant, but it didn't. Instead, it seemed to be assessing him. Communication was happening, but not through any technology or language they understood. "Incredible," Vox muttered, reviewing the data again and again. The mission log showed something unprecedented. Where previous encounters would have resulted in conflict, Junho had navigated a peaceful resolution. The team passed through the creature's territory without a single hostile interaction. Yuna Kim's research was revealing something profound about human capabilities. It wasn't just about communication, it was about connection. Humans seemed to possess an ability to read and respond to alien life in ways no other species could. Back at the research facility, heated debates erupted. Some scientists were skeptical, arguing that Junho's encounters were just luck. Others saw the potential for a complete revolution in interspecies relations. The Galactic Confederation had always approached alien encounters with a mix of scientific curiosity and defensive preparation. Junho was showing them a different path, one of understanding, of finding common ground. As the day wore on, more footage was analyzed. Each encounter told the same story. Junho's ability to connect with alien life seemed almost magical. But it wasn't magic. It was something far more complex and beautiful. The research team began to understand that communication was about more than just words or technology. It was about intention, about seeing the living being behind the alien form. Junho represented something new. Not just the explorer or a scientist, but a bridge between species. His approach challenged everything they thought they knew about interspecies interaction. The unexpected connection was more than a scientific breakthrough. It was a glimpse into a new way of understanding the universe, one where empathy could be the most powerful tool of exploration. As the sun set on the research facility, Unikim smiled. Something extraordinary was happening, and they were just beginning to understand its potential. The research laboratory was a hive of activity. Screens flickered with complex data, holographic models of brain structures spinning slowly in mid-air. Scientists from dozens of different species worked side by side, united by a single goal: understanding the mysterious human ability to communicate across biological boundaries. Junho's recent missions had turned everything they knew about interspecies interaction upside down. What seemed impossible to others came naturally to him, and a select group of human researchers. Dr. Kirill Vox carefully examined a complex neural scan. The human brain was unlike anything in the known universe. Where most species had predictable neural pathways, human brains showed extraordinary flexibility. Connections formed and dissolved in patterns that seemed almost alive. "Look at this," he said to his research partner, a blue-skinned alien scientist named Lara. Her multiple eyes focused on the holographic display. "The neural plasticity is beyond anything we've ever documented." The research team had discovered something extraordinary about human neurochemistry. Their brains produced a unique combination of neurotransmitters that allowed for unprecedented emotional communication. It wasn't just about language or sound, it was about something deeper. Experiments revealed that humans could produce complex emotional signals that could be interpreted across seemingly impossible biological barriers. A human's emotional state could calm aggressive creatures, bridge communication gaps, and create connections where technology had failed. Junho volunteered for extensive testing. Unlike many scientists who might resist such thorough examination, he understood the importance of their research. Each scan, each test was a step toward understanding. They discovered that humans had a remarkable ability to produce what they called empathetic resonance, a form of communication that went beyond traditional sensory inputs. It was as if humans could transmit emotional information at a fundamental biological level. One particularly fascinating experiment involved Junho interacting with a silicon-based life form that had previously been considered completely uncommunicative. Previous scientific teams had spent years trying to establish any form of contact. Junho spent just 30 minutes with the creature. The results were shocking. Not only did he establish communication, but he also helped the scientists understand the creature's complex internal systems. What had been a mystery for decades was solved through something as simple as human empathy. The research team worked around the clock. They ran test after test, each one revealing more about this unique human capability. It wasn't magic. It was a sophisticated form of communication that humans seemed to possess naturally. Relic Strand, the skeptical alien commander, who had initially doubted human capabilities, now watched the research with growing interest. His species had relied on complex technological communication for millennia. Humans were showing there was another way entirely. "It's like they can see the living essence of other beings," Lara commented during one research session. "Not just with their eyes, but with something deeper." The scientific community was divided. Some saw this as the most significant discovery in centuries. Others remained skeptical, claiming the results were too extraordinary to be true, but the evidence was mounting. Humans could do something no other known species could. They could connect across seemingly impossible biological and emotional barriers. Junho remained humble throughout the research. He didn't see himself as special. To him, this was simply a natural way of interacting with the universe. Where others saw differences, he saw connections. The research revealed that human empathy was more than just an emotional response. It was a complex communication system that could bridge gaps between species, resolve conflicts, and create understanding where technology and language failed. As the research continued, more questions emerged. How did humans develop this ability? Was it a result of their unique evolutionary path? Could other species learn this skill? The laboratory buzzed with excitement. They were on the edge of something extraordinary, a completely new understanding of communication, of connection, of what it meant to truly understand another living being. Junho watched the scientists work, a slight smile on his face. He knew they were just beginning to understand something he had always felt was natural, the ability to see the living essence in every creature, no matter how different it might appear. The scientific breakthrough was more than just a discovery. It was a window into a new way of understanding the universe, a way that began with empathy, connection, and the simple act of truly seeing another being. The conference hall was massive, filled with representatives from species that had been at war for centuries. Tension hung in the air like thick smoke, centuries of conflict seemingly impossible to resolve. Junho Park stood quietly at the edge of the room. He wasn't the lead negotiator, but something about his presence changed the atmosphere. The alien delegates looked nervous, uncertain. Two species, the Krell and the Vorax, had been fighting for over 500 years. Their conflict had consumed entire star systems, destroyed countless planets, and resulted in millions of deaths. Diplomatic. Teams from hundreds of different civilizations had tried to negotiate peace. Every attempt had failed. The Krell were silicon-based life forms, massive crystalline beings that communicated through complex energy patterns. The Vorax were organic creatures with multiple limbs and a highly aggressive territorial instinct. Their differences seemed insurmountable. Traditional diplomatic approaches had always focused on territorial agreements, resource allocation, and complex political negotiations. But Junho understood something deeper was needed. As the lead negotiators began their usual arguments, Junho noticed something. Both species were driven by fundamental fears: fear of extinction, fear of losing their cultural identity, fear of being misunderstood. He stepped forward, a simple movement that caught everyone's attention. The room fell silent. "May I speak?" he asked quietly. The conference moderator looked surprised but nodded. Humans were still a relatively new species in the Galactic Confederation, but their recent diplomatic successes had earned them respect. Junho didn't use complex arguments or political language. Instead, he began to tell a story. It was a simple narrative about two different communities learning to understand each other, about finding common ground when everything seemed impossible. Something extraordinary happened. The energy in the room changed. The Krell representatives, who typically remained completely still during negotiations, began to subtly shift. The Vorax delegates leaned forward, their multiple eyes focused on Junho. He wasn't just speaking, he was creating a connection. The story touched on universal experiences: fear, hope, the desire to protect one's community. It wasn't about who was right or wrong, it was about understanding. Relic Strand, observing from the side, watched in amazement. Decades of diplomatic training had taught him that conflicts were resolved through complex negotiations. Junho was showing something completely different. As Junho spoke, he moved between the two delegations. His body language was open, non-threatening. He made eye contact with representatives from both species, showing genuine interest and respect. The scientific research about human empathy was proving true. Junho was doing something beyond words. He was creating an emotional bridge between two species that had considered each other enemies for centuries. Hours passed. The usual diplomatic tension began to dissolve. Representatives who had entered the room ready to argue were now listening to each other. They were seeing each other as living beings, not as enemies. By the end of the day, something unprecedented happened. The Krell and Vorax agreed to a comprehensive peace treaty, not through complicated legal language, but through a mutual understanding of each other's fundamental needs and fears. Junho hadn't forced a solution. He had simply helped them see each other differently. The Galactic Confederation was stunned. Conflicts that had seemed impossible to resolve were now being approached differently. Human diplomatic teams were suddenly in high demand, their unique approach changing how species communicated. Later, in a private debriefing, Junho explained his approach simply. "We're all living beings," he said. "We all want to be understood. Relix Strand realized they were witnessing a revolution. It wasn't about winning or losing. It was about connection, about finding the living essence beneath cultural and biological differences. The diplomatic landscape was changing. Humans were showing that empathy could be a more powerful tool than any weapon. That understanding was the true path to peace. As the sun set on the conference center, a new era of galactic communication had begun, and it started with a simple human who understood the power of truly seeing another being. The Galactic Confederation headquarters glowed with a soft blue light. Delegates from thousands of different species gathered for a historic moment that would change everything they knew about communication and cooperation. Junho Park stood near the central platform, looking modest despite the extraordinary events that had transformed galactic relations. Around him, representatives from species that had never spoken to each other now conversed freely, sharing stories and understanding. The changes had been rapid and profound. Where once species approached each other with suspicion and defensive strategies, now they sought connection. Human diplomatic techniques had revolutionized interspecies interactions in ways no one could have predicted. Carol Vox, now a senior scientific advisor, presented the comprehensive research documenting the human approach. Holographic displays showed countless examples of how empathy had solved complex conflicts that technology and traditional diplomacy could not. Humans demonstrated something fundamental, Vox explained to the assembled delegates. Communication is not about technology. It's about understanding the living essence of another being. The Confederation had established a new training program. Representatives from hundreds of species were now learning what humans called empathetic communication. It wasn't just a diplomatic skill. It was a complete approach to understanding life itself. Junho watched as young diplomats from different species practiced the techniques he and his colleagues had developed. They learned to read body language, to listen beyond words, to see the living being behind the alien form. One remarkable change was how conflicts were now resolved. Instead of long, complex negotiations, species began to find quick, compassionate solutions. Wars that had lasted centuries suddenly found peaceful resolutions. The research showed that humans possessed a unique neurological ability to produce emotional signals that could be interpreted across biological boundaries. What had once seemed like magic was now understood as a sophisticated communication system. Relix Strand, who had been a skeptical military commander, now led the new Diplomatic Empathy Institute. He had become one of the strongest advocates for the human approach, teaching other species how to truly connect. We used to see differences, Strand would tell his students. Now we see connections. The impact extended beyond diplomacy. Scientific research, exploration, and cultural exchange reached unprecedented levels. Species that had never spoken to each other were now sharing knowledge, technologies, and understanding. Yuna Kim, who had been instrumental in the initial research, now traveled the galaxy, teaching and documenting the ongoing transformation. Her work showed how a simple shift in perspective could change everything. During one memorable conference, a representative from a silicon-based species shared how human techniques had helped them understand their own complex internal systems. Another described how empathetic communication had solved environmental challenges that had seemed impossible. Junho remained humble throughout this revolution. To him, this was simply a natural way of interacting with the universe. He continued, to explore, to learn, to help species find common ground. The Galactic Confederation was no longer just a political organization. It had become a true community of living beings, united by understanding and compassion. Scientific journals documented the transformation. Where previous research had focused on technological solutions, now they explored the deep connections between different forms of life. Humans had shown that the most advanced technology was empathy itself. Young beings from across the galaxy studied the human approach. They learned that true communication was about more than words or technology. It was about seeing the living essence in every creature, no matter how different it might appear. Junho often reflected on how something so simple could create such profound change. It wasn't about being special or unique. It was about recognizing the fundamental connection between all living beings. As the conference concluded, the assembled delegates represented a vision of the galaxy that would have seemed impossible just a few years earlier. Species that had been enemies now worked together, understood each other, and celebrated their differences. Kirill Vox made a final statement that would be remembered for generations. Humans don't just communicate, they understand. And in understanding, they create peace. The sun set on the Confederation headquarters, casting a warm light on representatives from thousands of worlds. They were no longer just different species. They were a community, connected by something far more powerful than any technology. A new era of galactic understanding had begun, and it all started with the simple human ability to truly see another being.